and welcome back to my channel, Pinky Perfect Dolls. So join me as I customise this ginger Breadhouse doll. She's an Ever After High doll. She's one of my favourite Ever After High dolls, and actually she was one of the first dolls I ever customised. So it's going to be fun to try again now that I've got a few more years experience. Sometimes I start out with a really clear picture of what I'm going to do with the doll, and I can't say that's the case with this one. I just know that I love her, so I want her to be really beautiful. So I'm just taking off all her original clothing. She is a second-hand doll, but I was quite lucky in that she came in pretty good condition. So yeah, I'm just going to take off all her original clothing so that we can get ready to customise. So now that her original clothes are removed, it's time to sort her hair out. I first of all removed this hairband. As per usual, these things are secured with a million hair ties and plastic clips, and then I cut her hair free. I really wish I'd used a pair of scissors. I started off with this Stanley knife, and it was a really blunt one and it just took forever. So once I had cut all her hair free, I was then able to give it a really good comb through. Honestly, I was hoping that possibly as I combed it through, that might be all I'd need to do to the hair, but it definitely wasn't as sleek or as smooth as I wanted it to be, and it had big dents in it from where it had been tied back for so long, so I knew it needed to be washed and conditioned. Then I removed her original face up with acetone, 100% pure acetone, and cotton wool buds. My little tip for you is if you're trying to get bits out of the corner, just squeeze the face a little bit as you go. It makes it easier to remove those edge bits. So yes, this is what she looks like with her original face up taken off. This is always a scary bit because I feel like there's no going back now once you've removed the original face. But it's also quite exciting because then my own visions for her can start taking shape. Then I seal with Mr. Super Clear, and here we are. Her hair is washed and conditioned and dried and styled. I didn't record this part because it was really hard to take my camera into the bathroom with me, but I just think she looks so cute. I've sorted her fringe, or as the Americans would call it, bangs, so that they're much smaller and more styled, and I just think she looks much more like what I had in mind now. Now I'm going to begin the process of blushing her cheeks. I grind soft pastels onto sandpaper and use makeup brushes to apply the blush. It looks quite heavy at this point, but not a lot of the pastel actually sticks, so you have to apply thick layers, blow off the excess, and then blend it in with a brush that has no product on it. Sorry about my filming here. So you can see I'm just fanning off the excess, and most of it is already gone. So I'm going to add a little bit more. It's also important to remember that when you add your first coat of Mr. Super Clear after this, you'll get a darker effect. Now I'm going to start sketching out her eyes. I've recently started doing this in mechanical pencil, as I find it a bit easier to control than watercolour pencils and easier to rub out if I make a mistake, like that. I decided that I wanted to give her quite narrow, almost realistic looking eyes, which is quite difficult to do given that there is a very great ident in the sculpt for this doll. Next, I just draw in her irises, which I'm keeping quite small for this doll, which again is unusual for me. And then I start adding some colour with watercolour pencils. First of all, drawing in the whites of her eyes and then her waterline, and basically just starting to sketch in the colours that I'm going to want. Decided to go for light turquoise eyes, as I've actually got a dress in mind now for this doll and it will match that dress. And now it's time to do her eyebrows, which is particularly difficult because of her fringe. I want to give her quite thick eyebrows, so I'm just going to sketch those in with watercolour pencil, and I apply it quite heavily at this point. And once I've sketched out the shape, I use the end of a cotton wool bud to smudge the ends and blend them like this. I'm also going to start adding in some brown pastel tones to give some shading to her eyes, just to blend in that upper lid, and later on I might add a little bit underneath, but I'm not sure yet. And once I've done that, it's time to apply another layer of Mr. Super Clear and let her dry completely before I try to add any further colour to her. So it's the next day, and you might be able to tell that my lighting conditions are a little bit different. I didn't get the best match. I'm still getting used to working with my current setup, so apologies that she suddenly looks a little bit more orange, but I would say this is closer to her natural colour. So now I'm going to just start building up more colours today. So I'm using soft pastels to build in her eyebrows and fill them out a little bit. And then I start to increase the whiteness of her eyes and the overall saturation of all the colours coming through. I'm just adding some more white underneath her eyes as well, and making those turquoise colours hopefully pop a bit more. And then I'm adding a darker blue around the edge of the iris and giving her a darker eyeliner on the top. I'm using this slightly to change the shape of her eyes as well. I want to keep them slightly more natural. Then I decide to add some more blush to her lips. I'm not certain about the colour at this point. I think she's gone too Barbie. And then I add little irises. I'm using blue to add shade to her eyes. This is something that I've seen other doll artists doing recently, and I'd normally use grey, but I think blue makes the look a lot softer and helps it look more realistic. Then I add some more shading using brown soft pastels, and I've decided that I want to make my shading a bit deeper and a bit darker. I'm going to go underneath her eyes and bring it out a bit more on the top. Some watercolour pens, which is something I've only started using recently, just to add in some extra tone on the top. Little bits of her hair kept getting in her face, as you can tell, but I didn't want to pin it out of the way because I thought it would ruin her fringe. I used a watercolour pencil to add some even darker tones to her eyes and blended it out with a cotton wool bud. And repeated it on the other eye. This bit of hair was really annoying me, so I ended up just snipping it off and getting rid of it. Much better. I decided I wanted to increase her blush a little bit. I did this using watercolour pens again, and this is a technique that I use where I add quite a lot and then blend it out with a cotton wool bud before it's fully dry. And as you can see, it takes her from clown to chic very quickly. I decided to give her lips a try with this colour, which ended up ultimately being too dark, so I lightened it up again later using the lighter pink watercolour. Then I used this watercolour pen again to sketch in her eyebrow hairs, but I didn't really like what I'd done, so I just ended up using it to build up the colour a little bit more. And I'll go back in again later and do her eyebrow hairs properly. It's me just trying to get the eyebrows equal, which feels like my whole life anyway whenever I'm plucking my eyebrows. And I decided just to add a little bit of pink underneath her eyes as well. I'm deepening the blue shadows at the top here. Then I just start adding in some little lines to give her lips more details. And add a little bit of that darker tone to the bottom lip again to give a bit more shading. All the while blending out with a cotton wool bag. I'm adding a little bit more blushing to her nose. So after another layer of Mr. Super Clear, I'm just going back in and adding the final colours and details to her face. Basically at this point I just want to make sure that all the whites are really white, that there's a depth to all my colours, and to sharpen up any lines that I feel like have become blurred. Finally adding in her eyebrow hairs using a watercolour pen and adding some depth and tone with a white pencil on top. This is normally the point at which the second eyebrow goes wrong and I have to start all over again, but actually they're reasonably even this time. When I'm happy with all the details that I've added in, now comes the part that I find the scariest, which is applying acrylic paint. I don't use a lot of acrylic paint in my pieces because it's not something that is my strong point. There are some amazing acrylic paint doll artists out there and I'm just not one of them. I have this lovely brush which is used for nail art, and I always test out to make sure that I've got the right amount of brush on my paintbrush on my skin before I start off. So I'm going to try and give her some white eyelashes. On the lower line, I thought that if I gave her dark eyelashes it would make her eyes look too dark overall, and that's not the look that I'm going for with this doll. So I start adding in the lashes, and for once they're actually looking okay. And then comes the scariest part of replicating it on the other eye without messing that up. While I've got the paintbrush in the right consistency, I just add in some other white highlights on the edges of her waterline, on the cupid's bow of her lips, and to give a little shine to her lips. Basically, any area that I'd like to draw attention to. I'm trying to keep my lines as thin as possible and using quite watered down paint so that it's not too much of a shock compared to the other colours I've used. And now that her face up is done, it's time to get her dressed. So I'm actually using a combination of outfits to get her overall look. First of all, I have these cute little white stockings with bows at the top and they're knee-high. And then I have this blouse, which was made by Elena's showroom on Etsy. She has some absolutely gorgeous pieces on there, and I've had this blouse for a while, but I haven't really known what to do with it because it's a very unique style with that high collar and the really long puffed sleeves. But I think it's going to look perfect for this doll. And then this skirt part of it is made by another artist on Etsy, and I hope I say her name properly, but the shop's name is Yurijuko. I believe I'll put the name up there in case I've said that wrong. And unfortunately I lost the blouse that's meant to go with this dress, but I think it just looked absolutely beautiful with the blouse. And then this petticoat is also a same part of the Yurijuko outfit, or La Princesa as she's also known. And then I have these beautiful little leather shoes that I've had for quite some time now, and I think they're just going to complete the look. So there we go, she's all dressed up and looking gorgeous, and off camera I just added a white bow to her hair because I just felt like she was missing something. And there you have it, Ginger's transformation into a Lolita princess. I like to think that she's the daughter of a headmistress at a fancy boarding school. And there's some of her details. I'm really pleased with how she turned out. I think she looks very sophisticated, which is unusual for my dog. Normally they look a lot more childlike, but I think she's quite beautiful. What do you think of her transformation? Comment below, I'd love to see what you think, but please be kind. If you enjoyed watching today, then please consider giving this a like and a subscribe. I'm hoping that I will have much more content on this channel in the future. I know I've been a bit slow to get started, but your support would really mean the world to me. And if you like my dolls, you can check out more of my work on Instagram at PinkyPerfectDolls. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!